Hey guys, since I got the question several times, I thought I'm addressing it in a short video. Hands and feet in cold weather. Pretty important because if those start to go, that means your body starts to go. So it's very important to protect those in whatever manner necessary and also preference, of course. We start with the hands, gloves, normal finger gloves, perfect for warmer conditions. If it's getting seriously cold, mittens. Mittens, you know, if your hands are like this, they're gonna warm up much easier. Another trick is like if your hands are really going and the gloves don't cut it, if you have a thick ass jacket on it, go out of your sleeves, have your, you have the jacket close, you have your hands inside, and then do this in it. Usually you should wear a jacket, a down jacket that is capable of doing so, because you need a little bit of movability and also the insulation layer. The insulation layer comes from air, not from the materials that you use, but the air in those materials. So it's very important to have not only clothes that are fairly flexible, but also that trap a good solid air layer in it. So what I'm using, if it's easy, if it's dry, I wear those. Those are just simple working wool gloves. They look like cotton gloves, but they're actually wool. Perfectly fine for that. If they're getting wet, I can put them inside somewhere, close to my body, heat them up, and that moist will transport out, and then they're pretty much dry. Also, when you're in your sleeping bag, just put them in there close to your body heat, and then they're dry over the night. If it's getting a little bit colder, mittens. Mittens keep you much warmer. Problem is, still, those are not waterproof. But for me, that works perfectly fine because I'm not running with those things when it's raining. If it's snowing, I'm gonna wear another thing. And also when it's getting colder. And this is my preferred method. Sometimes I'm even using them in autumn training because if it's like a little bit rainy, it's like around -1 degrees and it's bloody cold. I'm wearing those as well. Those are just moose hide mittens, quite spacious, and I have those ones in there. Also just wool mittens, that's it. -45, I would say like -30 or whatever, -35. I'm just wearing those and don't even have gloves on when I'm going in, because the problem is gloves are usually used when you're doing something with your hands. Then they tend to get wet for whatever reason, if the dogs are a little bit clammy or whatever, and you go in there and you have snow on it that starts melting, your gloves are wet and your fingers are going to get wet, and then they're not going to get warm. So I just no gloves and straight into my warm, spacious gloves that warm up my hands pretty quickly. And if they're cold, then I do this. Another good trick is doing that to keep them warm. It basically presses all the your blood, towards your hands, and also it activates muscles that you usually don't use, and then they get warm. This is a good system to keep your gloves like this. I usually just make a knot. You can make yourself like some fancy system, harness system, whatever. Some companies sell it. In particular, when you have like some Alaskan knitters and sewers, and so they do pretty awesome work when it comes to that. I keep it fairly simple. You can also wear those kind of things here. That's sealskin. Same with a mitten in it, and then they're perfectly good to use. You can also wear down mittens, they're pretty awesome, but the problem is they're pretty fragile. If they're getting a little bit damp and whatnot, they lose insulation value, and also the outer material is super fragile. They rip, and your down is just flying everywhere. So keep that in mind if you're buying some really fancy, expensive ones, because those things are not that expensive. So you're like at $150 or something like that, if you want to get like really, really good ones, 300 or so, but the down mittens usually come at the same price. So it's much better to have something that actually lasts much longer. Alright, shoes. You're obviously not going to run in those things here. But most important thing is wear something that's flexible. I hate those stiff ass boots that are just like clumsy, big, stiff, and just have like a thick ass layer around that. Yes, they insulate, but if you can't move your foot in it, they're not going to do anything. Because what keeps you warm is the warmth that is transported out by your foot to this insulation layer, and then that insulation layer keeps you warm. You know, it's a vicious cycle basically. So you need something that actually flexes. You know, so you can actually flex your foot. That flex movement is going to cause your foot to get warm. You know, the blood circulation is going, and that actually transports warmth out. You know, it's the same with your hands. If you start doing this, they get warmer. You know, pretty much the same method. Another trick to do when you're getting cold is doing this. You know, or start running or whatever you have to do to keep your body warm or to get your body warm. You know, I love those shoes. Super simple, just an outer layer. You have a wool layer in it, and then whoops, another wool layer in there, and a contour sole, which also gives you a little bit more, because it's rubber, gives you a little bit more insulation from the ground. Those work perfectly fine because they're flexible. Downside, not waterproof, and that's where the tricky part comes in. You have to adapt to whatever conditions you have. I usually run around in rubber boots when it's like minus 15 or so, because then the snow tends to be still a little bit wet. After that, I'm gonna go into those. For me it works really well. The downside with the rubber boots, or in general like with those kind of boots, is all the moist that you produce is staying there. And that's where another trick comes in. Also with those boots, I'm wearing them as well, like if I'm working quite much. You have a liner sock. This is not a liner sock, but you get the drift. You first layer liner sock, and wear a vapor barrier over it. This is a freeze bag, you know, pretty simple. You just slip in, and then you just wear a thick sock over it. Pretty simple, works well, really well for me. When you come to camp or whatever you do, when you go home, take it off. Your foot is going to be a little bit drenched, but all the other material is going to be still dry, and that is the most important part. But because if you go on longer trips, you can't really dry everything out, and then you get into trouble when everything gets wet. You know, so you keep everything as dry as possible. So that is a very good method. Sorry for running a little bit through it, but I don't want to make this video too long. If you have questions, just give me a contact. You know, call me up or whatever. Another method is those ones, Lobben. I personally don't like them so much. They have a good insulation level, yes, but you get snow in here, they get wet. They're pretty awesome if you just go on short trips or whatever. What mushers usually do is like they have another overshoe over it. Mostly Neos, Navigators, I think they're called. Pretty good, but they're getting heavy and clunky after some time. You know, if you have this rubber sole, it's flexible, but if you have another rubber sole on the bottom, they just equal each other more or less out. You know, so it's if you want to use Lobben are nice, like when just walking around, you know, in town and whatnot, then they're pretty good. But if you're just want to use those outer shoes, I definitely prefer to use an inner part. You know, this is, like I said, 9mm. You know, you can wear those and then you're perfectly fine. With 1 or 2 thick socks, I wouldn't go overboard, you know, so just get like 2-3 sizes bigger than your normal shoe size, and then you're perfectly fine with it. Don't go overboard, you know, don't go 5-6 sizes over it, because then you have too much layer in it. Your foot is like slipping around and whatnot, you know, and you have too much air layer to try to keep warm by your foot. It's also not going to do you any good, you know. So that's pretty much from my about those kind of things. Another good thing to use is sheepskin that you just make your own boots out of, you know, and then just have an outer layer on it. works really well. Greenlandic Inuits nowadays use it as well. You know, they have their polar bear skin outside, and then inside it's sheepskin or whatever other animal they have, you know. Works really good, but the problem is it's getting super hot, you know. That might be not really something that you want, because the more warmth you have on your feet, you know, if you constantly work against like overheating on your bottom, what you tend to do is like you strip your upper body of clothes, and that, or from insulation layer, and that is really counterintuitive, you know. So you start to drain your body heat, your core heat, you know, and then your feet staying warm. That doesn't really help much. So yeah, just have that in mind a little bit. Not oversizing, but proper sizing, so you have enough air layer in your shoe, in your hands, to keep that warm. Flexibility in your shoe. Look on if you need water protection or not, you know. Certain things don't require it, you know, if it's, or you have two different pairs, you know, for depending on the snow conditions or cold temperature conditions, you know, what have you. That's what I do. Rubber boots compared to my Steger Mukluks, you know. Those kind of things are pretty important. Otherwise, just go outside, enjoy your time out there, you know, stay safe, and all those other good things, you know, have fun.